WNST of rare occasions. The Orioles apparently have assembled the hookah lounge underneath the auxiliary area at Oriole Park at Camden Yards for a rare glimpse into not one but two Orioles owners and a new executive vice president and general manager for the baseball side of things. Luke Jones was allowed into the press conference. They don't let people like me in, but Luke, you were there. You got a question. I don't know that you got an answer to the Brady Anderson question, but certainly for 41 minutes, two Angelos family members for the first time ever sat and answered these kinds of questions. And we have a new baseball guy who is a competent, well sought after, well thought of baseball guy. So for a day, they're deodorized. At least they'll be scouting the Caribbean this winter.
Right. And look, I mean, we always talk about these press conferences, and typically we're talking about the state of the Ravens at the end of every season, whether we're talking about the more successful seasons several years back or what it's been the last couple of years. And my stock answer, typically, it's about what I expected it to be. To your point, I've been covering the Orioles in at least a part-time capacity since 2010. This is the first time I've attended a press conference with a member of ownership actually sitting there and fielding questions, so that's something different. I can recall being in one scrum around Peter Angelos at the end of the 2012 division series against the Yankees in the Orioles clubhouse. In fact, I think that might have been the first time I had myself physically laid eyes on Peter Anderson.
First or last? Both.
I think, you know what? I think I saw him a couple times before then, and, you know, have I seen him from afar maybe once or twice? Maybe, but it's rare. So
yeah, I saw him at the barn. I saw him at John Stedman's funeral, and I was 20 feet away from him in Sarasota one day, but he was, behind closed doors. And then there was the time at the Hyatt when he saw me and Jen when she was bald, and Peter Schmuck, and he ran from us. So I've been at this 25 and a half years he's owned the team. I've seen him 4 times ever, right? So I'm with you.
So from that standpoint, I'm glad that ownership was willing to answer questions. Now, did we get all the answers we wanted? No, of course not. But do you get the answers you want from Steve Bisciotti all the time? I know he said that there were bigger fish to fry, and, well, then the Ravens drafted Joe Flacco's replacement. And my point is not to beat up on Steve Bisciotti. It's that these press conferences, is there value to them? Yes. Is there a lot of value to them? I don't really think so, because ultimately actions speak louder than words. And as much as I like the Mike Elias hire, I wasn't expecting anything earth-shattering from him. I didn't expect him to say, we're going to kick Chris Davis's butt out of the building as soon as we're done this press conference. I didn't expect him to lay out every single person they're going to hire, because I think that's an ongoing process, from Sid Meidel to whoever they're going to end up hiring as their manager and filling out their scouting department, et cetera. I mean, this is the one thing that you talk about when you're talking about building from the ground up is we've said it. It's scorched earth right now. I mean, they completely gutted their major league roster. They have some minor league talent, but not nearly enough. The talent that they do have still needs to be developed. And no matter how much money you might have, and short of cutting a check for Manny Machado, which would be really surprising and clearly isn't going to happen at this point in time, there's not anything he could have said or done in this press conference that's going to completely wow me. Now, that said, we can judge optics and things that were said, things that weren't said, and I'll hear all that, but at the same time, I'm not sure, it's when it's a head coach, when it's a manager, when it's a player signing, there's really some enthusiasm to be gained from that. When it's an executive, I mean, ultimately, you're in this position.
Well, they're going to have a managerial press conference pretty soon, right? In the next couple of weeks, they're going to have one of those, and we'll see the trajectory of where the hookah lounge takes us down there,
right.
And who asks the questions and who's honest, but who's selling who's recruiting the community? I keep going back to the fact that there's no one there. There are people like me who put the television on at 10:30 because I'm not allowed to go to the press conferences, which doesn't speak of any dawning of new day to me, who for 21 years covered the team like you've done for the last decade as well. So, I've got my own axe to grind in that, but then there's the whole, if you're really trying to start over again and you want to bring people like me and Dennis Colazzos and 100 other people around here. I talk to Bill Cole about it every week. I talk to all sorts of people who love the Orioles, who want to treat it like it's normal and have season tickets and be a part of it and want to go down there. There needs to be a recruitment even above and beyond competency, right? Because they're still trading off of that. Well, we won more games. I mean, Angelos was trading off where he went to college to make himself sound smart and whatever. I mean, it was a bizarre little hour for me at this point, not knowing these guys at all, not really. This is the only way I can know them, is that they show up for a press conference, right? And they talk about we're a public trust, and they talked about the other owners. And then when you ask them about Brady Anderson, it's like they barely know him. And instead of just taking it on, saying, hey, Brady's a big deal here, and we trust Brady, and he trusts Brady, and Brady's a great guy, and Brady will get up here and tell you what a great guy Brady is. And, you know Brady, and you can ask Brady questions because we're all great guys here. We're all transparent, and we lost 115 games. Not, we're going to hide Brady, we're going to hide ourselves, we're going to go away, we're going to put this guy up. He looked a little uncomfortable, Elias, a little bit. This isn't what he does, which is get out in front of a brand, and that's not what he does. I thought he was a B-, if not a B, in the things that he said in the I sense his competence. I'm not questioning the competence. I'm questioning how it all buffs up around the edges for a guy like me that just went through a Stanley Cup run with hockey and has covered hockey for 30 years, a guy that covers football intimately and has for a quarter of a century, and a guy that covers sports and gets in and about different ways. I live here. I know what the city represents. I know what they're trying to do and what their goal is. I'm wondering if they have the right guys in all the seats. And these two kids acted like ownership is a passive, discreet thing that should never be seen or heard. That's not ownership in 2018. Ownership in 2018 is molding and shaping an obviously broken brand in a broken community where there's not a lot of money and there's not a lot of opportunity other than getting the people like me and like your mother and your sister and your brother and your aunts and your uncles who eat Pizza John's in Middle River to start going back to baseball games and being bought in some way. I put the television on it at 10:30, man, and they're showing Rick Sutcliffe with John Miller and Brooks Robinson on the call, and skinny Brady Anderson is running around with skinny Bill Ripken, and then they do the sign-off, and they give it to Tom Davis and Mike Flanagan. So here's Mike Flanagan, alive again, throwing to the press conference where they're going to hire. Even on television, they didn't do it right. So it's these 50,000 feet things that they could have buttoned up and had Dave Johnson on the television at 10 o'clock in the morning in a tuxedo and making this thing a big thing for the people who did take part of their day and put it on. Or they could have Mass in 1992 classics leading into this press conference where the owners joke about not really ever wanting to do this again. And I don't know, man. It's just they didn't sell any tickets today. And I'm not Bill Veeck, but I mean, at some point, they got to have people like me and the naysayers wanting to buy back in. Not you, who's already there and saw him play 65 times in person this year. I'm talking about the people who aren't there anymore. And part of the offseason and the carnivals and the winter carnivals and selling tickets and making every press conference a big deal and every B.J. Surhoff signing and every Rafael Palmeiro signing, and I am going back 25 years, that every time they come out of the cave to do something in November, in December, in January, when spring training starts, they need to be front page news. They need to look competent doing it. They need to be, what's Glenn Ross? They need to always be selling. And I thought it was a really lost effort on their part to do the reset that they were kind of looking to do in some way, because I don't think that anybody's anymore. To your point, it's an executive, it's 5 years away, and I don't think there was anything about the press conference that said to me these kids are going to be any better, different than their dad was. But this other guy's got the baseball side together, and that's cool, and that's good, and that's awesome. And I applaud that, and we'll have plenty of time to be talking about that every day. But on the first day when the owner's sons come out from under a cave to stand in front of you and take a Brady Anderson press conference question, Luke, you know what I'd like them to do? Answer it. That literally, they did a good job of doing nothing. And if that's what they want to do, that's fine, but that's what they did. They did nothing. They didn't even pronounce anything about their father. We don't even know which one of them is really in charge. Or, he talked about this mythical board of owners, and Jim McKay's dead. He doesn't own part of the team anymore. Sergeant Shriver doesn't own part of the team anymore. So it's like all of this, we have this brain I don't buy any of that. I didn't buy what they were saying. I don't think they were honest, Luke. Now, Mike Elias, hey, man, I buy in on that. Let's go win some baseball games,
Okay. I hear you, and I don't even say I disagree with you completely, but you say this, what do you want them to say? Because you just said you don't believe them anyway, and you said it's nothing different. Well, Peter Angelos, I attended Dan Duquette's press conference when he was introduced, which was November of 2011. So we're talking 7 years ago at this point. Maybe Luis Angelos was there. Maybe because that was, remember, 2012 they did the statues, and
I think he was part of the picture. You know what I mean? Like the photo op.
But my point is, ownership didn't take questions then. It was Dan Duquette propped up there, coming out of hiding from the 8 years that. It had been
ownership hasn't taken a question in 20 years since Peter sat with me at the barn in 1997.
Right,
the first time they take questions, they need to do better than they did on Monday. For me, that's all I'm saying.
Okay, but the fact that it's different from their father because they did take questions. You didn't like their answer. I don't like the answers that I get from John Harbaugh and Ozzie Newsome all the time. In fact, there are plenty of times I don't like the answers they get from them. That's not.
They don't ban me from coming for interpreting that and then telling the truth. If you're going to give me lies and give me fake, no, that's fine. If you're going to avoid the Brady Anderson question, that's a hell of a thing to avoid for them, given what Buck and Dan and everybody else in the organization has been saying about it, and what the media has been hearing about it, what the industry hears about it, then when they get asked that question, Kristen Hudak or whoever banned me from coming to the press conference should at least school them up with some kind of an answer other than, well, what did Mike say? Mike said he's comfortable, so we're comfortable. I thought Lou particularly didn't show so well.
Well, and this is where I will criticize them because they didn't give any kind of a clear cut. They didn't give an endorsement for Brady Anderson, and they didn't say that he's not going to be part of the future. So my question on that is it to be determined?
Which is about as nebulous as the whole thing's been to begin with, right? The answer was as nebulous as the role, as is the mystery around all of it, and they didn't do anything to help that or hurt that in any way when you
sure, and that's my one issue and it's why I asked the question because I wanted to know one, is he going to stay? And my specific question is one, is he going to continue to be with the organization? Given the questions about what his role has been and problems with chain of command, and two, will his role be clearly defined, and will he answer to Mike Elias and wasn't really answered in any way? So that either means status quo, or perhaps it means there is going to be change. And I will say this, for what it's worth, I saw plenty of members of the organization, PR staff, lower-level baseball ops, people of that nature. I saw Gary Racich, for example, their director of scouting, who has remained with the organization at least for now. Clearly, Elias, at least hypothetically, is going to be the one that decides on the future of individuals. And he's not going to come in with a completely empty front office. He wants to learn from these people. And then, hypothetically speaking, he decides on their future at some point in time, whether it's 6 months from now, a year from now, whenever their next contract runs up. That's how it works. It's not as though someone comes in to run baseball ops and they have a completely empty building. You do want some holdovers, at least in the interim, who can tell you some information about players and tell you what's worked, what hasn't worked, and then you evaluate what's happening and you evaluate that person. So there is going to be, but getting back to the point I was trying to make before I went off on my tangent, I did not see Brady Anderson there. And I looked for them, and I can't say that I had a attendance list where I checked off, Brian Graham and Gary Racich and Trip Norton, and go down the list of anyone who's still with the organization that hasn't already been let go or has left. So I can't say that I saw all of those individuals, but I specifically looked for Brady Anderson for probably a good 10 minutes before the press conference started, and I did not see him there. Now, does that mean anything? Not necessarily, but it does speak to the uncertainties that, I don't know. If we're going to
just be on the up and up, just be you talk about transparent and public trust and saying all that stuff, and then when I ask you about Brady Anderson, you give me the old okey doke, I don't know, and whatever. I mean, come on, it's November. Yeah. Who's running the team? I mean, who's involved in running the team? That is a baseline question for an organization that's lost 115 games and has been widely perceived as mismanaged. And now that I've seen these two kids get up, and stand around Elias, I know why it's been mismanaged. I'm looking at them and thinking they're probably not very good managers of things. And that's my opinion of watching it for 45 minutes and being banned from being there when they're talking about dawning of a new day and all the other parts of this. So I don't have a lot of confidence in where the whole ship is going. I am confident that they got a competent guy to come in here now. Whether he's really going to be able to run it or not does speak to the elephant in the room, which is, where is Brady Anderson? So I give you 100 points for asking the smartest question of the day, because that's what anybody smart would be asking right now. That's what everybody inside the industry is asking, right?
Sure. But I'll say this. You do, if you feel they hired a good person, then you have to give them credit for that. I mean,
sure.
You're saying, but what I'm saying is, and the other thing that's at work here, Lou and John Angelos haven't run the Orioles for the last 25 years. Now, they've been there, and they share some share of that responsibility. I don't know what percentage that would be. But
my sources tell me very little, by the way, that
sure.
that over the last 15 years they've been as appalled by it all as I've been. But
and if that's the case, don't they deserve some benefit of the doubt to figure this out? And okay, they didn't hit a home run in their first press conference, but again, I don't really know what you expect them to say that is going to have meaning to you specifically. I hear you about this whole recruitment thing. No one's buying tickets because of a general manager. I mean, no one buys Ravens tickets because of Ozzie Newsome. They buy Ravens tickets because of the team that Ozzie Newsome has put on the field, and that's how it works. And believe me, I hear you 1,000%.
By the way, who's the nasty chef? The Gordon guy or whatever, Gordon Ramsay? You know what he would say is, if you're going to shut down your restaurant, you're going to reopen it, right? And you're going to say the chef we had and the wine guy, right? Dan and Buck, they're not here anymore. But listen, we got a great restaurant. We got great food. We got a great menu. We got a great tradition. We've been in the neighborhood a long time. And we're going to bring in this new guy. This guy's from Houston. He's got a little Tex-Mex in his background, right? He's cooked in a lot of great places. He cooked in St. Louis, where they had great cooking there, and they just won medals with their cooking in Houston. And he's number 2, but he's a bright guy. We're going to bring him in here. You know what I mean? I would say that you would want to reopen the brand, and the first time I come in to get a meal, right? Like literally, I want to feel something. And I thought for John and Lou to come out and do this, I really was and especially the way John sort of commanded the beginning of the press conference. I thought there was going to be a dawning of the new day and all of that, and at the end of the press conference, it feels like they're going to slink back into the background, and we won't hear from them for a long time. And we all know the team's going to lose a lot of baseball games in the next couple of years.
Right.
That's baked into the cake. Now the answer is, why am I coming back now? Well, I want the warm fuzzies. I want to feel the team. I want a sense of change. I want my press credential back, amongst a bunch of other things. And then I want questions answered, whether it's me asking it or whether it's some goof from another station asking it, or whether it's you asking about Brady Anderson. Look the fans in the eye and be honest for the first time in 25 years, because we all know how much you've been lying. We all know how much you've been going away. We all know this is the first time out. If this is your first time out at the rodeo, be prepared to serve me a good meal, because I know when I get to the ballpark next year, it's going to be gruesome. I know that. So if I'm putting the television on at 11 o'clock and stopping my day, or in this case, willing to come down to a press conference or give my time or listen to it in the buyatoyota.com audio vault, or care enough about the Orioles right now to want to see them do well, and I do, then give me a better meal than what that was on Monday. I mean, they've had 6 months to do this press conference, right? The boys have, right? And
Sure.
I just thought that he settled some sort of an agenda in the beginning, and then he went to Peter's body language and the back pat and the deflection of everything, and I just didn't think it was very good. That's all. That's my opinion. My opinion is it didn't show well. It didn't show well for me, but I think Mike Elias showed well. But to your point, talk about a guy going into the back cave for a while. I mean, he's not going to be associated with a baseball player that we get on the field and who really contributes for at least 2 or 3 years, like where we're going to assign a new Manny Machado or Carlos Correa to him. We're a ways away from that. So to some degree, nothing's going to stick to him. He's going to be a genius until he's not, right? I mean, he gets a 3-year halo here of being a genius no matter what he does. And if somehow they're playing 500 ball 2 years from now or whatever, or play the second half of the 20 season at 500, and they've got 2 pitchers and an outfielder, we'd feel good about that. Baseball people, with people like you and me that are engaged. I don't know about the people on the outside, right?
Well, and again, this is going to be a process, and believe me, I'm not saying that I was wowed and I thought this was the best press conference I've ever heard or anything like that. I guess I don't know. I just don't know what I really expected beyond kind of what we got. I would have liked more clarity on Brady Anderson, absolutely. But as far as the rest of it, when you're in the process of rebuilding an organization, and I don't even know if it's rebuilding, it's building, because this thing, even when they had success from 12 through 16, it wasn't like it was all right. It wasn't like it was all kumbaya. It wasn't like there weren't dysfunctional aspects to what they did, like the fact that they were completely absentee in the international market. And I thought Mike Elias handled that question pretty well in saying that he feels confident that the Orioles can be a big player in the international market sooner rather than later because he does have relationships. And I've talked to you about this so many different times, how you need to have that. So, you know, but as far as the baseball stuff, I mean, I didn't expect him to, you know, have a clinic where he's spelling out new wave stats and had his computer or his PowerPoint presentation, as Lou Angelos quipped when they first met with him the first time. But I don't know what they could have possibly said that is really meaningfully moving the meter other than they hired a good baseball person. They say he's going to be in charge. They say he's going to have support and he's going to have autonomy. And people can believe that or they're not going to believe it. You know,
well, they're not going to believe it when you ask the owner's sons about Brady Anderson and they don't answer the question.
Understood. And again, I'm in agreement with you. That question, that answer stunk.
From an organization that has sold me a load of BS for a generation, literally. This isn't something that's new. And, you know, again, I'm a media member. After 21 years, it was thrown out. I'm not allowed to ask questions anymore. So my questions are even more pointed about where your honor and your integrity and your civic trust and, you know, all of that jerk-off material that I hear that is, you know, that's, what do you call it? Eyewash? You call it eyewash, right? That's what it is, right? Yeah, eyewash, because they're going to go away, and they're going to hire a manager in 2 weeks, and they're going to lose a lot of games. But when does the recruitment of the city and the community come? That's at some point, they need a cheerleader. I keep saying they need a Kenny Cooper, and anybody old school would know what that is. Can
I ask you, like, what would that look like? Because I'm really just wondering, because you say that a lot. I don't really know what that looks like. I mean, you can give away bobbleheads, and they've given away free tickets to kids. I've said over and over, if there's one fan outreach thing I'd like to see from them this offseason, it would be to finally offer in-market streaming of your games because it's been them, the Nationals, and the Dodgers for years now being the only teams in Major League Baseball. So I hear
they were the last team to stream in HD, and they were making the most amount of money off the network in the world. Like, it's crazy.
Right. But I guess my question, like, so what would that look like? Because I hear you say that a lot, and they have done some good things, and they should get credit for being innovative to the point where they're the first Major League team. I mean, some of the sports business journals and some of those outlets have said of any Major League team to offer something like that. So what else would you do? I'm going to give you the floor right now because I want to hear what you would do to reach people in that way.
The first thing is make the baseball team better, and I think they did that.
Well, Nestor, I mean, we've talked about that over and over and over. Winning is paramount. But beyond that, because you can't snap your fingers and rebuild overnight, but beyond that, what would you do?
I think the mistakes they've made in the last 2 years since they won and Buck after the Toronto thing, the last couple of years they've made a lot of mistakes on baseball side of things, but kids getting in free, discounted tickets. I remember 2 years ago I tried to go out there. It's $20 on a Tuesday night to see the Chicago White Sox. The kinds of things they could do while things are bad. The kids are free, but the parents are $23 to get in and surcharges. I know I'm going down to Atlanta in 2 weeks, Luke, and I'm going to see what they're doing with their concessions. I have partners here where the concessions are so much, my partners are getting blamed for it. So I think things inside the ballpark, and when you come to the ballpark to want to come back to the ballpark, part of that would be the city itself and the mayor and the police and what happened in the backside of the riots to let people know that they can safely come to the ballpark, that you want them coming off the farm and coming back to the ballpark. The first thing I would do, honestly, would be fix the television network, because we've all paid a lot of money for that network, and putting it on half an hour before their big press conference and finding Mike Flanagan alive in a 1992 rerun game, that they could be recruiting people to their brand in all sorts of ways that I see the Yankees do it, the Red Sox do it, the Cardinals do it, the Falcons do it, the Ravens try to do it. The Ravens are out giving turkeys to the whole world this week. Like, literally, I got a list that was 4 pages long of every Jameel McClain and Ed Reed and every other guy coming back and being a part of all that stuff. Last week, the 83 Orioles got together, and the Angelos family wasn't even there. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, you gotta get out and glad hand the people, not just like you that are already there and Tom Davis and everyone that's following Steve Molesky to the gates of Orange Hell. You need to get people who used to be involved in Awake again. Market the Ravens games. Market the offseason. Get into marketing with the racetrack and the casinos and get involved and get your players involved and get Mike Elias involved. And when you finally come out and have a press conference, don't avoid the questions. You lost 115 games. There is no arrogance of you being billionaires and this thing surviving nuclear holocaust, that on the other end of all of this, the Orioles will always be able to print money because they're the Orioles. Because for 30 minutes, I watched the lead up to it, and all I saw was everything I used to love about the Orioles. Rick Sutcliffe and Chris Hoyles and Bill Ripken and Cal Ripken and John Miller and Brooks Robinson and Mike Flanagan and all of that stuff. And then they give me a press conference in a hookah lounge and don't answer questions. So that's how I feel on Monday afternoon. And, you know, sure, part of it is that I have my media credential taken away, but that is the baseline. The baseline is, do you guys want to be transparent and honest, and is this a civic trust, or is this an ATM for you and your family? Because it's been an ATM for you and your family for 25 years, and there's nothing about the press conference Monday that said it's just going to continue to be an ATM for you and your family with Mike Elias running the place. So that is disappointing to me.
Other than the fact that they did at least attempt to answer questions, and they did hire Mike Elias. But, I mean, I hear you, and believe me, when I say...
The stadium's empty. The city's empty. You know, the trust is broken.
Well,
you know?
There were also 15,000 empty seats at the Ravens game with Lamar Jackson making his first NFL.
No doubt about it, and that'll be Tuesday's conversation.
I don't know how much of it... I don't know where the Orioles part of it ends and its other factors where those begin, but... It's not 100% an Orioles thing. I think it's becoming abundantly clear.
It's an American
other
thing.
Issues.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's an American sports issue, yes.
Right. And that's not to absolve them. I want to be very clear about that.
That means they should work even harder. I mean, I guess that's my point.
Doubt.
My point is they're still eating off of Randy Milligan and Rick Sutcliffe. You know what I mean? For God's sake, it's 2018. I've been a fan all my life. You've offended me for half of my life. You've lost way more than you've won, and yet... You show up in your penny loafers and fly off to Florida, and now you're the next generation in charge of this that's going to kick it down the curb to say, well, we'll just win and you'll all come back because fixing the baseball is what it's all about. And that's not what it's all about. Talking about community involvement and all that, how about you just, if you're going to be a civic trust, act like one. Your old man didn't act like one for 25 years, so let's not act like that's where we are. That's not where we are. If it was a civic trust, there'd still be 3 million people coming back downtown like they did for the Cubs when the Cubs stunk for 25 years. This group of people has not earned that. They have not earned that, and they started from scratch on Monday. They really did. Luke, when's the last time I asked them for a press credential? Tell the audience. When's the last time I sent an email and said, I want to come and cover something?
Well, I mean, the season credential form that we fill out
that they deny once a year, right? When's the last time this is the first email I've ever sent to Kristen Hudak, and she's been around for 3 years. I gave them an opportunity to say, you know what, come and sit at the press conference because it's what you do for a living, and you've done this for 30 years. But instead, it's still petty, it's still small, it's still, we're not going to answer questions, and they didn't answer the questions anyway, so it saved me. I sat in bed with my cat and ate cereal and watched the press conference like I've done for 12 years. But this isn't about me and them. This is about them and the community. Literally, this is about nobody's eating at their restaurant, and that's not good for anybody. And what can they do to change that? They had an opportunity on Monday to get a first all-in with me. They'll have another opportunity. Most people didn't even know the thing happened Monday. Like, literally. I mean, it's not like the world was buzzing or Twitter was aglow with Mike Elias or even the Angelos boys because the old man hadn't said a word in 20 years and nobody seems to care. But I thought this would be sort of the new – when I saw the Orange Hookah Lounge, I'm like, whoa, look at that, man. Look, they're – and then John and Lou are there, and I'm like, whoa. And then John starts the press conference, and I'm like, ooh, maybe this is going to be something here. And instead it's, we'll see you next time we see you, boys. Go get him. We'll see you on opening day.
But that's the big key. They were kind of asked this question, and they danced around it, but – when will be the next time that we see them answering questions from the media? Will it be 6 years from now when they're hiring their next general manager, when Mike Elias has gone on to be a president somewhere or is fired because a rebuilding effort doesn't work, which happens quite often, actually? But is it going to be then, or will we see them more frequently? I mean, let's be very clear about this. It's not like Steve Bisciotti's holding court with the media every week like Jerry Jones. But
hang on. How many times a week do you physically see Dick Cass working in that building? I run into Dick Cass once or twice a week, and I'm not even trying. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And I know he's running the place. I just saw 2 kids born on third base thinking they hit a triple, sitting at a press conference doing the hiring and firing now based on what level of competence, I have no idea. Most people would tell you not a lot of level of competence, not confidence.
Yet they hired a competent person, apparently.
Apparently they did, and then avoided the Brady Anderson question.
Give them some credit, Nestor. I mean, you keep saying that nothing's changed. They hired a good baseball person. They didn't hire Dan Duquette Part 2 or Sid Thrift Part 2. And when I say Dan Duquette Part 2, meaning someone who was out of baseball for 7 years, not that Dan Duquette wasn't competent, because he was competent. He did a solid job, even though no one really expected that from the start. So, I mean, I keep hearing you say it's the same thing. One, it seems like they hired a good person. 2, they at least, Peter Angelos wouldn't even get in front of the media and not answer questions. So, do I want it?
It's an upgrade. I'll give you that. It's not an F. I gave it a D.
Right. And do I want it to be better? Sure. Do I think that they could have answered some questions a little more with a little more meat to them? Sure. But
this isn't about them versus the media. This is them and the fan base. This is them and the business community. This is them and their season ticket holders. This is them and people of color. This is them and people who live in the counties that don't want to come to the city. This is their outreach. This is the only platform they're going to get this winter after 115 losses, because they're not signing Manny Machado. They're going to bring in a manager that nobody's heard of, that everybody's going to Google. They're going to roll in the winter carnival. They're going to screw around, and Adam Jones is going to sign with Team X in City Y, and they're going to roll out for opening day and wonder why, 42,000 people show up and leave in the 5th inning and don't know who the guys on the field are. And then they'll go back to drawing 3,900 people on night 2, unless they give a bobblehead out. That's where this is going. What are they going to do to make it better between now and then? That's all. That's all I'm asking. I wouldn't sit here if I talked to them for hours over beers, over at the Four Seasons or wherever they hang out. I wouldn't be acrimonious about Peter, I'd be saying, like, what are you guys doing to get in front of, like, people who might care about your team other than getting on a plane and going to Florida on Friday? Like, what are you doing to make this better, not on the baseball side, on everything around the baseball side while you're waiting on that? Sure. And you know what they would say? We're buying ads. You know what I mean? Like, dude, not a good answer. And it hasn't been a good answer for a generation here. And, you know, and I watched how the Ravens are operating even in bad times when the seats are empty, that I saw 30 members of the 2008 team back on the field running around, you know, for fun, you know, over the weekend. And I see the turkey stuff they're doing. And look, a lot of it's lost on people, right, what the Ravens have done here. But pound for pound, ounce for ounce, what the Ravens have done in the community over the last 23 years and what they had to do in the beginning when the Orioles were the big dog in town has literally dwarfed, you know, to my eyes, my ears, my sensibilities, my senses, my nervous system, in the community and in every way, what the Ravens have done has dwarfed what the Orioles have done. And I would like to see at some point the Orioles want to do something about that, other than talk about it.
Agreed. But at the same time,
and they lost
you can't do that. You can't do that overnight, though, is my point. I mean, yeah, everyone wants to see the Orioles be a contender again. That's not going to happen for a while. I don't care. You can hire the best baseball person ever, and you can't snap your fingers and be rebuilt. It's a process. I mean, it absolutely is a process. And
so knowing that that's not going to happen fast, right? So then it's knowing that I don't have a World Cup for 4 years. What do I do between now and then to make people interested in soccer?
Well, and some of the things that they have started to do, they need to do more of that. And I totally agree with that. And again, I'm not saying that the things that they've done are the end-all, be-all. I'm saying I'm crediting the fact that they have done some of those things. And yes, they do need to do more. You know, it's great to offer free tickets to kids. That's a great initiative. But what else are you going to do? You know, they revamped some of their concession prices last year, and you know, some of it was a little bit cheaper, other stuff wasn't. You know, what are you going to do about that? The Ravens revamped their concessions this year. So if the NFL team in town can do that, why can't you? So,
Luke, I'm giving it to you as straight as and like in the smallest way I can give it to you. Maybe because you did ask me to take the floor, and I'm trying to like kind of because you know I didn't have every note here. I would just say this: I live 3 blocks away, and I have my own axe to grind, my own issues for what they've done and haven't done. But I am still at 50, right? Wearing a Free the Birds hat, talking about their brand, on my brand, for all that I've ever worked for in all my life, to have a radio station and have a media company that would in some way promote their brand and promote sports and local sports and all that's good about sports. And you know, privately, publicly, that I feel that way. But I live in a building that's 2 blocks away with people all around me who like baseball, are involved, have been involved in the past, live downtown. I got friends that live in Fed Hill. I'm trying to find, and I went on opening day and never went back again this year. Most people I know have some sort of similar story where they went once or whatever. And Marty Conway always says, how do you take somebody that's been twice and make them come 6 times or 8 times? And like that is the difference in all of this. And how do you take the people that used to go and make them come back again? Or how do you take the people like me that I just want a fair shake, bro. You know what I mean? I literally just want them I don't care if they win or not, and I never cared if they won, because winning and losing, you know, sometimes that the fans care more about that than I do in a lot of cases, because I just want honest effort, and I want a strategy, and I want a good plan, and then even then, Alex Smith breaks his leg and you don't win, right? Like, you know, even then that happens, but getting people like me who are a little pissed off, or maybe more pissed off or less pissed. And the opposite of me is not pissed off. I'm pissed off and still paying attention. Most people that are pissed off are gone, or the opposite, of course, is indifference. How do you turn indifference into, there's something going on there, and I used to have a good time sitting on my dad's lap at the game, and you know, I would go downtown again, and how much is it to go? Oh, and the kids are free, and how much are the hot dogs, and who's their player, and you know, did he come and talk to Johnny's school, and should we go down there, and does my son want to go, or my daughter, are they making me want to go? All of those things they should be worried about, that these born on third base billionaires look like they could not wait to get back behind the shadow of the curtain of the wizard. And I'm going to write it that way because that's the way it looked to me. This was their chance to come out and recruit, and all they did was, you media folks, and and now we're going to go away, and it's going to be business as usual. And until they get their own Dick Cass, their own Steve Bisciotti, their own, maybe they have their own Eric DeCosta or Ozzie Newsome or whatever, until they get that, I don't know what they're going to have, because it's going to be a long, quiet off season, and there's going to be a lot of losing ahead. And the people that are bought into who Mike Elias is and sabermetrics, and they're all in. They're all in. This is and we'll chronicle this from here to four, Luke, about how they're trying to take this thing that they built in Houston and do it again under scorched earth. That will be the start of the book, right? But between now and then, be nice to people, be transparent, run the place differently than your old man did. I saw them showing up, doffing their cap, and running off. And until I hear differently or see or feel differently, that's what my takeaway is from Monday.
Fair enough. I mean, I'll disagree to some degree, because the fact that they even answered, took questions. I mean, like I said, that's already a start.
That's like asking, saying Putin takes questions, but is he honest?
Okay, but then they're damned that they do, damned that they don't.
Well, then be honest. Come out and be transparent.
But you don't believe them anyway. You just said you don't believe them anyway. So what value is it? I mean, believe me, I hear what
maybe
you're saying.
Somebody would believe them.
Okay, maybe somebody does.
I'll start to believe them when I have my press credential, and they're good enough to take a question from a guy with my skin color, which is apparently orange today.
From your personal standpoint, that's valid. I'm not, and again, I'm not disagreeing with you, but at the same time, I have seen certain measures done, like free tickets, like the fact that because the media gets a free giveaway with everyone they want to promote, the quality of the giveaways have gotten way better than they used to be. I mean, they used to be, they're quite frankly, mostly junk. Now there's some pretty good stuff they actually give away. They have done stuff with concessions. They put up the rooftop bar a few years back. Now, do they need to do way more? No question about it. I agree with you 1,000%. But at the same time, John and Lou Angelos haven't been running the show for the last 25 years. Will I give them some semblance of benefit of the doubt? I'll give them some time. I value the fact that they at least were willing to be part of the press conference, even if they weren't as transparent as you'd like them to be. And certainly that's something you'd like to see increase moving forward, and I'd like to see them.
Well, you can't use the word transparency, literally in the press conference, and say civic trust in the press conference, and then not be transparent. You know what I mean? Like, then don't come if you're going to lie to me.
But let's also not act like the Ravens haven't been transparent before. I mean, Steve Bisciotti said they weren't going to draft Joe Flacco's replacement, and then they did. So my point is not that the Ravens are liars too; it's that I think we're putting way too much stock into a press conference here,
but it's the only one we have to judge, because no one from ownership has said a word in 25 years. I mean, it's like Willy Wonka came out. I swear to God, I said to my wife, this is like the grand opening of Willy Wonka, seeing two Angelos members taking questions. Now, what will they say? Right? I was all glued in on what they were going to say. Apparently, Lou doesn't have a lot on his mind, and John is the community leader there. Obviously, John is more the alpha of the two, based on 41 minutes of human communication and body study. And they looked very, very disinterested in recruiting the community. They looked more interested in fending off the media. If I had to sum it that way, that's the way it felt to me. And I don't think we'll be seeing much or hearing much from them anytime soon. I don't.
And you might be right. And if that's the case, then shame on them, because they should be, again, I don't expect a press conference every week. In fact, what Jerry Jones does with the Cowboys is absurd for an owner to do that every single week. And it creates a circus. So there is a fine line. And for years we talked about Peter Angelos meddling. So there is a fine line when you're talking about what you want your ownership to be.
They use the word discreet is what they use. Discreet. Discreet is when you're like, you're cheating on your wife. Discreet is not how you own a public trust. A public trust should not be discreet.
But if this is truly going to work, wouldn't the public trust be that they trust Mike Elias and John Vitalen to do what they've hired them to do, and it starts working. I mean, that's really what matters. I mean,
that is what matters.
And you said, really, that's really what matters. I mean, to be totally honest, if they have competent people running their organization and making decisions, and they're supporting them in that they have what they need from a financial standpoint, from a resources standpoint, if they do all those things, and look, that's a colossal if. I totally understand that. I don't need to hear from them then if those things are done. Now, in the past, people that have been in those positions haven't had autonomy, and they haven't had the support, and they haven't had the financial means that were required to do the job. So then that's a big problem. So I don't mind the discreet comment if what they're saying at face value is authentic, and time will tell. For all we know, and look, I'm not reporting this. All I said was I didn't see Brady Anderson there. For all we know, Brady Anderson might be on the way out, and maybe they didn't have a good answer to express that, or maybe that's a to-be-determined kind of thing. I don't know, but if they say that Mike Elias is going to have carte blanche and he has autonomy on baseball decisions, all we can really do at this point is wait and see, because you either believe them and you might end up being disappointed because it's not the truth, or you don't believe them and then what they say doesn't matter anyway. So the actions will speak louder than the words. That's always the case with these types of things. Do I think they hit a home run with the press conference? No, I don't think that. At the same time, I guess you had way higher expectations for what this was going to be, and
I thought if they were going to come out of the cave, they would come out with something impressive. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like the people around these kids tell me that they've known them all and look, if they could run the place, they'd be running the place. They don't look interested in running the place. I keep hearing that, but someone has to run the place, and I don't mean the baseball farm. I mean run the place so that it has professional people, which it hasn't had in a long, long time. They got to do better than Greg Bader.
Sure, and look, I don't. That's fair, but at the same time, even if they don't have a lot of experience and they're not comfortable running this thing, it seems like, despite the fact that there was radio silence from a media standpoint, and quite frankly, ideally from their perspective, from anyone's perspective, they'd probably rather not have all their different candidates out there that they're interviewing and so on. But it seems like even though this process took a while, they came out of it with someone that's very highly regarded, so they deserve credit for that. And I put way more stock in the fact that they were able to get that done, much more stock than anything they're going to say in a press conference. Now, that said, this is a to be determined, and it's a moving target. And there's never a case where you should ever just say, I don't expect anything more from them, in the same way that just because the Ravens won 2 Super Bowls in 12 years doesn't mean that they get a permanent pass forever. And, because they've created a really high standard, a much higher standard than what the Orioles have done over the course of my 35-year life, which has been a whole lot of nothing and a whole lot of disappointment and a whole lot of incompetence across multiple ownership groups and multiple front offices and multiple teams on the field. It's been way more losing than winning. But that said, for what it is and for where John and Louis Angelos are in taking over and understanding that their father is still alive, and there's lots of speculation what his state of health is.
And nobody asked them about him. I found that fascinating.
Sure, and that's on the media then, and I'll wear that just like anyone else in the room. I think we're all kind of.
That's just fascinating. That's fascinating. That like it's like Rosebud, like anyone else.
No, you're right.
Anyone else who's a public figure, who's a billionaire, who's owned a team for a quarter of a century. I mean, not that the fan base was all that vested in him, as a human being, because he wasn't very vested in the fan base, quite frankly. It's not like he was a man of the people or whatever, but. Shouldn't there have been some sort of status or update, even if it's a one-sentence sort of, Dad's not doing well, we appreciate privacy, but, that's why we're here. Okay, that's all I need to hear. That's all I need to hear.
And like I said, as a media member that was in that room, I'll wear that as one of however many people were there who didn't bring that up. And that's fair. That's something that, and that's something that they should have, whether they say they're representing their father, whether they say that they've assumed the day-to-day ownership of the organization, whatever. That should have been addressed. I agree with that 1,000%. Even if it is a case, like you said, that please respect our family's privacy, and we're just going to leave it at that. Whether and we've all heard, and many listeners, people around town have heard various things about Peter Angelos' health, and we understand his age. I mean, it's just a reality. But you're right. That's something that should have been addressed. And hey, I don't expect them to have it all figured out, especially considering they grew up. And I say grew up. I mean, these are middle-aged men. They're not 20 years old, but they saw a lot of how things shouldn't be done. That doesn't mean I necessarily expect them to know how to do everything the right way. But
it's a fascinating thing. Like if I'm psychoanalyzing this, they saw this when it was really good, and the old man was making no money and went into debt.
Sure.
Now the stadium's empty, and they've got $1.5 billion sitting in their bank account, of which, by the way, their partners are trying to come take $400 million of it on December 14th.
Right.
So that's to be continued as well. And no one pressed them on that, and they weren't interested in talking about that. Although that's all of our money that we gave to them for this network we don't even watch that Major League Baseball got together with. So there's a lot of meat on the bone for them and for their involvement in the press conference. I expected more, but I always do. I always do.
Fair enough.
There is, what do they say? Don't expect much and you won't be disappointed, right? But okay, look.
And when I say I didn't expect much, I guess I don't know from my perspective, I'm not sure what they are going to say that makes things better. You know what I mean? Like there's no magic answer. It's going to be through initiatives and actions and people they hire, and whether those people are going to be good at their job and whether they're going to be allowed to work on their job. What we've seen to this point, even though there was radio silence throughout the summer, and look, I was right there with you. Someone should come out from behind the curtain and address this. And the fact that they made it Dan Duquette and he ended up getting canned 2 months later is kind of hilarious when you think about it in retrospect. Not for him, but just how you handled that. But that said, if this is a good hire, and I think it has every potential to be a good hire, and we'll see what they do on the business side. I like some of the initiatives they've made over the last 12 months from an outreach standpoint, whether it's free tickets, whether it's bringing Brooks Robinson and Eddie Murray back on a move that's 25 years overdue. Totally agree, but it's being done now at least. They need to do way more things like that. No, there's no question about it. They need to be more cutting edge, streaming service, all that. I've talked about that. But I also understand that this is a new role for them, and I'm hopeful with some of the hires that they've made to this point that they've hired good people. I'm hopeful that they support them and let those people do their job. And I'm hopeful that they continue to make some other good decisions and work on that outreach like you mentioned. I mean, believe me, there are absolutely things they can do to improve their fan outreach that they're going to have to do between now and whenever they get to a point where the product is appealing enough from a competitive standpoint where they can start selling baseball again.
Or if they didn't roll out of bed and started losing money, which is really the problem. I mean, part of the problem in the modern era is they don't have to do anything. They don't have to look interested at a press conference. They don't have to do anything. I mean, the thing's going to make money. We're in a new generation in that way where, to your point, the problem with baseball, the problem with all these sports, hockey's never really had that. Hockey's always had to go out and sell it because, they need people in the building. That's how they make money. But when you get too big to fail or whatever that term would be, then you can lose 115 games and not be desperate about anything and show up wearing loafers and roll off to Florida and just, kick the can, literally, because it's not going to affect the long-term anything if they lose 110 more next year and 105 more the year after that, until such point where the television money isn't free anymore. And maybe we're getting to that point, too, where, if they had to have asses in the seats and they had to win to be relevant and they felt like they had to, then it would be different. But that's not where they've been in a long time.
That's fair. And look, I mean, there's a lot of work to do, but I'll also throw this out there. It was reported over the weekend that Mike Elias is the highest paid first-year GM in Major League history, or it's believed anyway.
That's correct, yes.
So, to me, that's another positive sign. I mean,
that's how you recruit the best talent. You pay them the most.
Well, but that's what you have to do. When you're the kind of organization that has the reputation that they've had for a long time, and so much of it is justified, then that's what you need to do. So I like some of these steps. Now, has it been as polished as you'd like it to be? No. I agree with that. And I don't think the press conference was amazing by any stretch of the imagination. And I was disappointed in the answer about Brady Anderson, certainly. The rest of it was kind of, for me, it is what it is. Again, actions are way more important than anything they're going to say in a sleepy November morning press conference. But what happens next? And that's the manager being hired. That's marketing your club. When do you put tickets on sale? Do you bring back some of the ticket deals that you had years ago, like bargain night and things like that just kind of disappeared right around the time that they gave Chris Davis $160 million? If we see more of those things, then that creates more encouragement that it is on the right track. And I don't expect them to be perfect, but I do like the fact that they at least got in front of the media, even if they didn't answer every question the way that you or me or Joe Fan would have liked. But it's a change from ownership never answering a question. And I know that's an incredibly low bar, but you've got to start somewhere.
Well, when they were asked the question as to whether they'd be more accountable, they laughed in the face of the media and said no and then chuckled it off and whatever. That's not the right answer, man. That's not the right countenance. That's not I don't want to be a dick and say that's not the way Dick Cass would handle it, but it certainly would not be the tone of Steve Bisciotti if his team lost 115 games last year.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
And we've heard...
You know what I mean? Like, the football team's been really damn good for a really long time, and we're all going to jump into Patapsco River if somehow they finish 9-7 with this kid running around and they lose 2 more games. It isn't hard to do. They lose to Kansas City, lose to San Diego by a field goal or an extra point. It will have been an abortion of a season. It would have been a horrible, disappointing year, and this team loses 115 games, finally comes out of the cave after 25 years, and pisses on me and then pisses on everybody that's in there by not answering questions and by laughing when asked if they're going to be more accountable. The stadium's empty. The stadium's empty. The city's empty. Your soul is empty. The cupboard's empty. You lost 115 games. The skyboxes are empty. Everything's empty. So it's not a joke. It's not a joke when we ask, are you going to be the ones that are accountable? Are you going to be accountable to fix this? And they laughed at that. That's, dude, that told me all I need to, you can couch it any way you want, wink, wink, and of course we'll be here. I heard his old man's voice in saying that when he said to me, or a very available individual. You want to meet with me? I'll meet you. I've heard all that for a quarter of a century. It is offensive, Luke. It is. It's offensive.
Okay. I mean, I don't disagree. I already said if this is the last time we hear from them in a press conference for the next 5 years, then I'm right there with you. But
it's just my prediction, by the way.
Okay, that's fine.
They didn't look like guys that are going to be rushing back for the managerial presser in 12 days. You know what I mean?
Okay,
like,
and maybe that's the case. But I mean, I don't. Again, they're in a lose-lose situation because we don't believe them anyway. I mean, it's, as far as their critics...
I'd like to believe them, but then be honest.
I'm just saying, but their critics don't believe them anyway, so what do they have to gain from it? They were out, they were part of a press conference, they answered questions. Did they answer every question the way you wanted? No. And I agree with that. But at the same time, they, in the role that they're currently in, are new at this. We know that they have at least extended and made efforts to try to get smarter at doing this. Both in stuff that's out there and stuff that's not out there for public consumption. So I feel like they're making an effort. Is it a finished product? No, of course not. Have they done everything perfect? Absolutely not. But I feel like there is an effort being made rather than losing 115 games and Dan Duquette and Buck Showalter's contracts expire and they let this thing go on for 6 weeks, and then you hire Ned Coletti, the guy that you met with in June, who's not an inspiring hire, wouldn't have been inspiring whatsoever. And
this is an inspired hire. They went out, they found the guy best in class, they paid him the most amount of money. Right. They told him what he wanted to hear. And when you ask about Brady Anderson in front of the world, they did not say, no. Brady's a great, family friend, and he's a great Oriole, but no. Brady will not be. Brady sits below, Mike on the food chain. Mike will decide what Brady's role is, not the other way around. That's a very easy thing to say that deballs Brady Anderson and elevates the guy sitting next to you that you are telling me is now in charge. Right?
Fair enough. Or, and I'll just throw this out there, I don't know, and I'm guessing probably not, but, or is it up in the air whether Brady's going to return? And if that's the case, they certainly aren't going to leave Brady flapping in the wind under that circumstance. Maybe we find out on Thursday or next week that Brady Anderson's leaving the organization. I don't know.
I will come back and retract an apology to Louis Angelos.
Oh, I'm sure. And believe me, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but,
Louis Angelos looked like he was doing what he was doing, which was answering a question about his best friend.
Fair enough. And look, I already said I didn't like that answer. It was a non-answer, but I also didn't expect them to be able to hire this kind of a quality person. 7 years ago, if you recall, they tried to hire someone who was a Mike Elias at that point in time. We remember the names, DePoto, LaCava. I mean, you go through the list of guys that they tried to hire, and what ended up happening? They got a heck of a lot of no's, and no one wanted to work for them. And Dan Duquette was basically the most acclaimed guy that would say yes, and it's because he had been out of baseball so long. The fact that the Suns were able to hire this guy in the first place gives me some hope. It doesn't mean that they haven't made or they're making all the right decisions or they're going to make all the right decisions. I expect mistakes, and Elias even talked about that on the baseball side. You never bat 1,000. I don't expect them to bat 1,000 by any means, but they need to start getting more of this right, and I think they've taken some steps, but they need to take many, many more, both on the field and off it, in trying to rebuild what it used to mean to be an Orioles fan and what it used to mean to be an Oriole. And for all the nostalgia about the Oriole way that really has been a marketing campaign for the last 30 years or so, and not much more than that, maybe you hope maybe this is the start of something that is better and more meaningful and something that eventually people will have pride in, but not going to happen overnight. And you can give away as many bobbleheads as you want, as many reduced tickets and cheap concessions as you want. Ultimately, you need a product that people are really going to invest in, and to your point, you need to treat fans well. And you hope that with some of the things they've done here recently, they're on the path to doing that, but they have a heck of a lot of work to do. There's no question.
Luke Jones can be found, Baltimore Luke, out on Twitter and out in Owings Mills now that things are quiet at the warehouse again. We're back to football this week, and the Ravens in preparation for the Oakland Raiders, who won on Sunday as well. Everything we do around here, Terps, Orioles, Ravens, Mike Elias, all in the buyatoyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore. We never stop talking Baltimore sports.